I don't.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it.
Horrendous idea.
I was angry at it, and it happened 30 years ago. I was mad. I was so upset that.
Welcome back to WrestlePool, and we are on the road to WrestleMania. I'm Hosier. This is Bear, and we're WrestlePooling today.
We're WrestlePooling.
What's going on, Bear?
I'm excited for what we're going to talk about. Not much is going on. I'm excited for all the WrestleMania stuff, but we're here and we're WrestlePooling.
We're WrestlePooling. All right, so on our road to WrestleMania, we decided we were going to watch all 39 WrestleManias.
What a commitment.
Very much so. And we're realizing the first few, that was a terrible idea. So we're going to watch all the WrestleManias, and we're going to give you our favorite match of each of the 39 WrestleManias. And today, because originally we were supposed to do this on every episode, but with everything happening in the world of wrestling, this has kind of fallen by the wayside a little bit. So we decided today we are going to take a full episode, and we are going to discuss WrestleManias 4 through 10.
4 through 10. We're going to do a little catch-up.
We're going to do a little catch-up. Never mind.
He's got a terrible mind.
I do. All right, so I'm going to let you start off with probably the worst of the WrestleManias that I watched, which was WrestleMania 4 from the Trump Casino.
That was the first. WrestleMania 4 is the first one of the Trump.
Yes, WrestleMania
Plaza.
5 was the second one.
They go back to back at Trump Plaza. So WrestleMania 4 is the first one. Rough.
Brutal.
Rough.
Oh my God, it was terrible.
Like hard to watch.
Yes.
But and I think that this was the best match. I think you've probably got it too. But for me, it was Steamboat and Valentine. That was the best wrestling match of the night. And it was a Steamboat match. It's really hard. I haven't found a Ricky the Dragon Steamboat match yet that I'm like, ooh, I can't watch that. Like, it's really hard to find just a bad match of his. He was just so clean. And Greg the Hammer Valentine, legend, great, great in the ring. Really one of those guys that worked well with Steamboat, because in that match he really sold.
Yes.
For Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. So that was my match. I thought that was the best match of that card. But yeah.
I agree. It was Valentine versus Steamboat. I have never seen and never want to see a wrestling tournament that I saw on WrestleMania 4 with all the silly, odd finishes, the countouts, the disqualifications. I think maybe one or two matches ended in a legit 3-count victory. It was brutal, but yeah, there's not a bad Steamboat match. Greg Valentine did such a good job, and the match only went like 6 or 7 minutes.
That's the thing, right? Like, and that's one of my things with a lot of these matches early on. And when we get to the end, I'm gonna explain like why I think some of my matches here at the end were those highlights for me. But like early on, those matches, 5 to 7 minutes. That's all they got. And for two guys who can really wrestle and can tell great story, that's just not enough time in the ring for them to be able to really build a match and do something memorable. So, they did what they could with the time that they had. And, that was the only match that I was like, good job.
Yeah. I've realized the type of wrestling I like.
Yeah.
Because I definitely know the type of wrestling I don't like. And early WrestleManias, a lot of it was wrestling that I just don't like. Yeah. But we sat down and we watched WrestleMania 6 together.
Yes.
And we commented many times. They all just looked the same.
They all look the same.
It was all just bodybuilders. It was all...
That's it.
It was all the same thing.
Right.
And it wasn't till like WrestleMania 9, 10 that we started to see a transition.
Very true.
So WrestleMania 5, back at the Trump Casino.
Yep.
And I have to say, I don't like matches on main cards like that only go 5-6 minutes.
Yeah.
But WrestleMania 5 was just another brutal WrestleMania to get through. And it's easy to go, the mega powers explode. It's easy to go there. Because that was a big moment as a young Hulk Hogan fan.
100%.
To see him finally beat Macho Man after everything that went on. But I'm going to go with one of the shorter matches.
Interesting.
All right? I'm going to go with Mr. Perfect defeats the Blue Blazer.
Interesting.
Okay, because I know who the Blue Blazer is, And enough is enough, and it's time for a change. I am such a huge Blue Blazer fan, and for the 5 minutes and 38 seconds that match went, it was hard-hitting, it was fast-paced, it was really good wrestling.
Yeah.
And I didn't find another match like that on the card.
That was a good match. You're right. Like, and Mr. Perfect is another person that, like, watching him through all of these early WrestleManias that he's been on, it was hard for me to see a match that wasn't great from him. Like, there were definitely, or to find a match that wasn't like, oh, like, okay, that was a good wrestling match, right? Like, there's not a lot of Mr. Perfect memorable matches. This is probably one of them from these early WrestleManias. So just another guy that, like, but I went a different direction, I think. And I went with the Rockers versus the Orient Express.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's no. Sorry, I gave away my number 6. I went to number 6 by accident. I went with the Rockers versus Big Boss Man and Akeem, the Twin Towers. It was just a really good tag match.
Mm-hmm.
Sad to see, like, I was sad to see the Rockers lose that match
on a count out, I think.
No, that wasn't on a count. No,
WrestleMania 6.
Well, okay. Yeah, Sean got pinned.
Okay.
WrestleMania 6, and that's why, like, I'm gonna bring that back. But yeah, Sean took the pin in the middle of the ring from Akeem on that match. But it was a good tag team, and I'm a fan of, like, good tag team matches. I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure WrestleMania 5, we also got the tag match, was Tully and Arn versus,
yes, that was the WrestleMania with that.
WrestleMania, I forget who, versus the Strike Force, Tito Santana and Rick Martel. And I was close to actually, like, I was torn between those two tag matches, because, like, again, like, you put Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard in a tag match in a ring, like, it's gonna be a good match, if not a great match. And that was a really good match, but I went with the Rockers and versus the Twin Towers there because I felt like they had a little bit of a better story, the underdog story. I didn't like the whole Rick Martel, like, walking out on Tito Santana and that, just because I guess I didn't understand the background of it because, well, I was a child and I didn't watch all of it. I just watched the WrestleMania match for the WrestleMania match. Yeah. So that's where I went with that one.
So WrestleMania 6, where'd you go?
Oh, here's a shocker. WrestleMania 6, I went with the Rockers versus the Orient Express. This was a really good match to me. This was a solid wrestling tag team match. The problem that I had with this match was the end was I think it was a count out. I'm pretty sure.
Almost positive it was a count out.
But it was very weird. Like, it was like it came out of nowhere that it was all of a sudden it was a count out and you were like, what is happening? But WrestleMania 6 kind of had that the entire night. Well, like, it was just, what is happening? Because WrestleMania 6 was another one of those where it was like, I think I said this to you, there were literally like 3 pinfalls.
Yeah.
On a card that had like 10 to 14 matches. So, like, 3 pinfalls the entire,
Yep.
Everything else was like count out, disqualification. I don't even think there were any submissions, and there might have been one submission, but so WrestleMania 6 was just another, like, catastrophe to me. And I thought that was my favorite match of the night.
Yeah, I went with my my childhood for this match because I was a Hogan fan, and when the Warrior lined up to challenge Hogan, I immediately jumped to the Warrior side.
Yeah.
And I lived in a courtyard, and there were a lot of kids. We all liked wrestling, and there was a Team Hogan, and there was a Team Warrior, and I was totally Team Warrior. And watching it as a kid, I felt like WrestleMania 6 was a classic.
Yeah.
But I was also like 6, 7, maybe 8 years old.
Right.
Watching it as a 42-year-old adult who's watched a lot of wrestling, realized it was a catastrophe. But that match, watching it, sitting here, brought me back to my childhood. And I tried to take the what I know now to something that happened then, which I do a lot of when watching these old WrestleManias. But I just remember how I felt watching it as a child, and that's why that match is so important.
It's an important match, 100%. Like, that is an important match in the history of WrestleMania. I just wish it was better.
Well, I wish a lot of things were better back then.
So, but what's interesting to me is 7, 8, 9, and 10, I think we start to get out of that phase, of that bodybuilder phase.
Yes.
We start to see them shift to real wrestling and we start to see them shift to longer matches, which is where we get to really start to see some of these legends that the Attitude Era stood on the shoulders of, and then today's generation in pro wrestling is standing on the shoulders of them and just paving this new way. So yeah, I'm excited to get into 7, 8, 9, and 10.
All right, so WrestleMania 7, I went with the end of the Macho King.
Yep.
I went with the Warrior versus Macho King. The match, to me, they both had the will to win that made them do unbelievable things. I watched the Macho King give like 4 or 5 of his finishing moves to Warrior.
Yeah.
And Warrior kick out.
Yeah.
And Macho King having that look on his face of just utter despair. Like, what is it going to take to beat this man? I also watched the Warrior do a few of his finishing moves and Macho King kick out, and then Warrior's kind of just like looking at his hand like he's about to do a spinner-Rooney like Booker T.
Yeah.
And to have Warrior win that match, to have Sherry turn on the Macho King, to have Miss Elizabeth come from the crowd. And Bobby Heenan did not do a good job of playing that off. Like he saw ghosts in the crowd at the beginning of that match when they panned to Miss Elizabeth. But that was, and doing the research, like they did the match for him to retire to go take a vacation. Then they brought him back because the guy who beat him walked out of the company. So little side fact about that match. But I went with Warrior Macho King for the end of the Macho King saga.
And that's honestly like iconic, like big like milestone or like chapter in Macho Man Randy Savage's incredible career. I went with something that I think for a very different reason. The match was a good match, but I'm going to preface this with this. As far as I know, there are 2 first like WrestleMania debuts that night. Do you know who they are?
No.
So the 2 WrestleMania debuts on WrestleMania 7, number 1 is Undertaker.
Yes.
And the second one is Kerry Von Erich. That is his first WrestleMania that he will wrestle in, and unfortunately, it will be his last WrestleMania that he will wrestle in. Kerry only wrestled at WrestleMania 7, which is a travesty. And what's, if you haven't seen the Iron Claw and you're going to go see it, please get ready. I haven't seen it yet, but I just know the story and how sad it is, and I'm excited to see it. But so I went with Kerry Von Erich versus Dino Bravo because of the Von Erich story, because that was, if everything had gone the way it should have gone for the Von Erich family, they would have run the WWF for probably the entire 90s, well into the Attitude Era, and would have just absolutely dominated. And we'd be talking a very different story about the Von Erich, specifically Kerry and David, Von Erich. So, but the crazy thing about Kerry in this match, and I told you this earlier, is he's actually wrestling with 1 foot. Kerry Von Erich got into a motorcycle accident in 1986 and lost his right foot, had to be amputated. And he wrestled from 1986 until when he passed away in 1993 with 1 foot. So to see him do the things, especially with Dino Bravo, in the ring that he was able to do for this match, even in the 5 to 7 minutes, I was like, that's my match. That's my favorite match of this because of the story, because of who it is, because he got that moment at WrestleMania for the Von Erich family and for all of his brothers. And I was excited to be able to go back and watch that. I knew the story, but I had never actually watched that match. So I was excited to get to watch that.
What did he have? That's amazing. He had 1 foot.
He was wearing a prosthetic. He wore a prosthetic. But if you think about,
he wore a prosthetic in the ring?
He wore a prosthetic in his boot. Yep. In the ring. And think about like the time, like in the 1990s, prosthetics were not anywhere near the technology that prosthetics have today. So if you watch Kerry Von Erich in the ring from 1986 to 1993 when and he's wrestling with 1 foot and you go, how is he doing these things?
Find more of his matches now. Yeah, that's for sure.
And there was always something very special about Kerry. The entire Von Erich family believed that Kerry would be the superstar. David was always the better. He was the ring general. He was the better wrestler, but Kerry had it. He just had that about him, and so it was cool to be able to go back and watch that, knowing all of the history around it and being able to see it, and so that's what I went with. Had
I known that prior to talking to you, I probably would have picked that and not said anything. But after you told me, I'm like, well, that's definitely his, because that's your tidbit of information.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. So, but
I have trouble doing things on 2 feet.
I know.
And this guy's a superior athlete wrestling on 1 foot.
It's insane.
That's craziness. All right, WrestleMania 8.
Yep.
What'd you do?
WrestleMania 8, I went with an interesting match in my opinion, and it was a good match. I went with Shawn Michaels versus Tito Santana. I'm going to let everybody know from this point on, this is very Shawn Michaels heavy, this list.
Yeah.
But I went with Shawn Michaels versus Tito Santana because I looked something up. At this point in Tito Santana's career, he was 39, almost 40 years old. Shawn was 27. So this was, in my eyes, not knowing any of the backstory when I look at that, just looking at these two in the ring, this was Tito passing his torch to Shawn and saying, hey,
I agree.
Here it is, like, you're carrying this forward. And Shawn, like, Tito and Shawn are very similar in style. They do a lot of the same things, and it was a really good match. Like, they told a good story. And so and you saw all of their agility and their abilities. Like, it's not a technical wrestling match. It's more of a modern, I guess more of a modern match. So you see that in the ring, and I was just very happy with it. And that idea of, like, this looked like that match where Tito was like, here you go, Shawn. And then to know what Shawn Michaels went and did. I think that this might have been, I didn't look it up, but I'm assuming, just thinking about the timeline, this might be Shawn's first WrestleMania after breaking up with Marty Jannetty.
Yes, it was, because I looked it up.
Okay, so for me, like, even that, telling that further, like, this is Shawn's first big, they opened the show. So that was my favorite match of the night.
So funny, because number one, Tito Santana got better every WrestleMania he was in.
100%.
And I thought that was his best match ever at any of the Manias he ever participated in. I thought that was his best match. So I have the same premise.
Okay.
The same setup, the same everything you just said, but for Bret Hart versus Roddy Piper.
Yeah.
Because this was Bret Hart's first singles match at WrestleMania.
Right.
Prior to that, he was Hart Foundation, and they were a great tag team, but this was his first. And to have Roddy Piper, beat the crap out of him. Okay? Roddy Piper hit him with an uppercut. I don't know if Bret got cut open the hard way or if Bret cut himself, looked like a vicious hit. Mm-hmm. And at the end, Bret's sitting on the canvas, he's bleeding, and Piper comes over and tosses him the belt, helps him up, raises his hand. It's like, all right, kid, I'm done. I think that was his last match in WWE, Piper.
It might have
been.
And
then we all know where Bret Hart went the next however many years to talking same thing about Shawn Michaels.
Right.
And how them two, their careers, seriously, there's so much parallel to them too.
It's crazy.
But same premise, just different match. For all the same reasons. Right. It was a good match, and Bret Hart showed himself as a true singles competitor, and then it was off to the races from there.
Yeah. I was close to picking that match. I really was.
And I was close to picking the Santana HBK match, which is why I went back and I did some research, and I'm like, I went back and watched some Tito matches. I'm like, wow, this guy just got progressively better every Mania down the line.
100%.
Low key, that flying forearm is a sick move.
It was great. Like honestly, like everything about that match was smooth.
Yeah.
But that's what you expect from Shawn Michaels. And I do want, like, thinking about watching Tito Santana over these first 6 WrestleManias up to WrestleMania, or 7 WrestleManias up to WrestleMania 8, I do wonder if it's just that Tito was in there with the wrong people. He needed to be in there with a guy like Shawn, right? Like, he needed to be in there with a guy.
There weren't many guys like Shawn until guys like Shawn and Bret showed up to give Tito those types of matches.
I don't think we ever got it, but I really would. And maybe it was on like a Saturday main event or something. I would love to see if there was a Steamboat Santana match somewhere.
I was just thinking that.
Because that's the guy that I think would have really made Tito Santana shine, right? Because, like, very similar style again. You know, Sean kind of took the best of Tito Santana, took maybe a little bit best of the Steamboat, put them together, made it his own thing. And, like, so to me, like, seeing that match probably would have been really good. We never got it at WrestleMania. But yeah, I think he just needed to be in there with a guy like Sean, and he was just waiting. Unfortunately, he aged out. You know, Sean didn't come along so they were almost 15 years apart in age and everything. So I think, yeah, so I really love that match. But the Bret Hart and Piper match, like, just the way they opened, to the way they finished with, again, Piper throwing him the belt, and everything was, the little details, the little things were spot on.
Yep.
And that's what you expect from Piper and Bret Hart. Like, you expect that from the two of them. So good matches.
Very good. Mania. Yes. Now, WrestleMania 9 was also a borderline catastrophe.
Yes.
But I am going to follow your lead in your HBK heavy comment.
You took my...
And Tatanka versus HBK by far and away. The only other match was the Steiner tag match versus the Head Shrinkers.
Yes.
Was number 2 to me, but Tatanka HBK stole the show 3 times over.
Agreed.
There was nothing even comparably close to what they did in the ring. It went like 18, 19 minutes, and it was fun from the start. It was phenomenal. And watching like the documentary of WrestleMania, you got to see HBK leads in, just off topic.
Yeah.
Him going out to WrestleMania 9 and everything that went on behind the curtain before going out to that match.
Nice.
In one of the documentaries about WrestleMania that I happen to remember. But yeah.
That was mine. Like, you took my match. That was 100%. I agree. Match of the night. They stole the show. Sean, like, and this is how I know it was a great match. First of all, I felt the match. Like, I every 3 count, there was every false finish that, 1, 2, 3 kick out, right? 1, 2 kick out. I was like, ooh, right? Like, I thought, but the one thing that I remember from this match, watching it, was the power slam from Sean does the crossbody off the top or the second rope, and Tatanka just whips him over. And I went, oh my goodness, that looked so good. So simple.
Had like a Randy Orton-esque look to it coming off the rope and whatnot. Yeah.
And it's so simple, but it looked devastating and it looked so good. I loved this match. I loved everything about this match. And when I was a kid, I remember Tatanka. I remember
Tatanka.
I don't remember Tatanka being that good. Like, it's unfortunate that I'm saying this, and maybe he was better, and maybe I just didn't watch enough of him when I was a kid. But I also looked up, at this point, Sean is 28, Tatanka's only 32.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like he's that present in WWF moving, after this. He's, he's there, but he's not. He's more of a mid-card guy than. And so I was like, wow, like, I wanted more Shawn Michaels and Tatanka at WrestleMania. Like, it was a great match.
Very good match. All right, where did you go for the 10th anniversary of WrestleMania?
There's only one place that I think anybody should go. Okay, that's a lie. There's two matches that I think you can go with. I didn't go with one because I thought you were going with it. So I went with brother versus brother. I went with Bret and Owen. Oh, dang it. I went with the wrong match. I went with Bret versus Owen. What just a spectacle of technical wrestling.
Yes.
Just like technical wrestling at its best. The two of the best technical wrestlers to ever do it. And also, like, Owen is just so good.
He's so good.
Everybody gives Bret his due, and that's fine. He is Bret Hart. And I don't think anybody like wouldn't say this about Owen, but Owen is just so good in that ring. And I loved in the opening, lock up, break off, come on, and even I forget who's on the mic, but he's like, what is he celebrating? And I'm like, right, like, that's the point. Lock up, he had him in a head scissors, kip up, celebration. Like, yeah, like, what are you celebrating, Owen? You've done nothing yet in this match. And it's just like, but those are the things, like the technical wrestling from Owen, this is what I felt like we never got from Brett that we got with Owen. Brett was the pure technical wrestler. He was great in the ring. Brett sometimes felt vanilla to me. Owen had real character.
Yeah, the personality shined.
100%.
It came through the camera.
Yes.
It was so evident that he was the personable one, and Brett was he was very over. Brett was super over.
Everybody loved him.
Everyone loved him, but Owen Hart was something. And he went on to just be one of the greatest characters.
100%.
All right. Wasn't he in Nation of Domination for a while?
I think so. I don't remember, but I remember.
That's when the Enough is Enough. It's time when he became the Nugget.
Yes. I remember Owen as the Blackheart. That's the Owen that I most remember is Blackheart. And yeah, that was like, but yeah, what just a spectacle of technical wrestling.
Well, you did take my match, but you are right. That was the match of the night.
That was it.
But I'll go HBK Razor with the ladder for a lot of reasons. Number one ladder in a ladder match.
One ladder.
I miss the one ladder in a ladder match. I can't stand 7, 8, 9, 10 ladders.
Right.
We also don't get a lot of one-on-one ladder matches anymore in this age of wrestling, which I miss. And watching this match made me miss it. Razor Ramon is never tired.
He had an engine that wouldn't quit.
His cardio must have been on level 3,000 because HBK looked gas.
Yeah.
Towards the end of that match, and Razor was like, I'm barely breaking a sweat, bro. Chico, he's doing these things. It was to say it was a legendary match is an understatement. They delivered. They also did that match like 50, 60 times around the world before they got to Mania. So the whole thing was just so well done.
Right.
And the HBK coming off the rope, his crotch on the rope to spin into getting his leg caught in the rope. I was like, I don't know if he practiced that, but in the back of my mind, I'm going, you couldn't do that again if you tried. I'm guaranteed it was flawless. Mm-hmm. And then how he managed to get himself out to push the ladder over, and Razor goes over, and it was just, if there wasn't brother versus brother, that match would be match of the night. But I can't disagree with anything you said about
that. Like here, it's very
and then
hard.
Owen going over only to have, and then I'm watching it and I'm like, wait a minute, Brett fights again tonight,
right?
So he does that match, which went about 20 minutes,
right?
Then he goes on to win the belt versus Yoko,
right?
And I'm like, oh, good for you, Brett,
right? Which again, like, just goes back to Brett's, like, Brett being the pure technical, like the pure wrestler of that family. But it was really hard for me, actually, because I've been a massive, massive fan. That ladder match is up there with Steamboat and Macho Man for me.
Yeah.
I've gone back and watched that match. There are a handful of matches that I have gone back and watched probably a dozen times. Steamboat Macho Man in WrestleMania 3, that ladder match, and the Iron Man match. Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. Those are like the matches that I have gone back and watched. I can't tell you the last time that I watched Owen and Bret from that WrestleMania. And this might have been the first time that I turned it on because they opened the show, and I was like, oh, this match, I forgot this even existed. And then I was just like, oh, that's like, I know that ladder match. Like, I know the Macho Man Steamboat match. So it would have been very easy for me to pick that. But there was something about that match with Owen and Bret that you just went, that was like, I could see the argument for that ladder match being the match of the night, but there was just something there that and tomorrow I might change my mind, but on camera, on YouTube now.
It's brother versus brother.
It's brother versus brother.
Absolutely. So that's our 10 WrestleManias. Now, there were some terrible matches. Okay? Some real terrible matches.
Yeah.
Matches like, all right, Hogan, Sergeant Slaughter.
Why?
Hogan, Sid Vicious.
No. Hogan, Sid Justice.
Oh, sorry, Sid Justice. How was Flair First of all, do we know any reason why Flair didn't fight Hogan in that?
First of all, here's why I did not pick Flair and Macho Man. I actually think Flair and Macho Man was a good match.
Yes.
I picked Flair. I did not pick Flair and Macho Man out of spite. Why in the world is the WWF champion not the main event when it's Macho Man and Ric Flair?
Because they weren't going to let Flair do the main event because Hogan would have complained, which is also probably why Hogan didn't face Flair at WrestleMania 8.
Right.
Because it was probably like, hey, I'm going to go over or not. We're not doing this.
It is mind-blowing to me. I was angry.
Yes.
That match, not only did that match not main event, it was in the middle of
literally
the
middle of the card. Yes. Yes.
I went, what are we doing? Right, like, and not only that, right, okay, if you said to me, well, it's Hogan Andre tonight, that's why I'd be like, and listen, Andre shouldn't, like, not saying that Andre should be wrestling, but if it was Hogan and this massive match that the story took precedent, it was Hogan and Sid Justice.
Like they literally had to throw Hogan a bone because there was literally nothing else for him to do at that WrestleMania.
Here you go. I didn't understand it.
Horrendous idea.
I was angry at it, and it happened 30 years ago. I was mad. I was so upset that Macho Man and Flair was not the main event. I barely watched the match.
And don't watch WrestleMania 12 because you're going to be disappointed again.
Well, and especially because the one stat that everybody throws out about Flair, right, is that Flair never main evented WrestleMania. Flair never main evented WrestleMania.
He didn't?
He did not. Him and Shawn don't do it. And then
that was Rock, Cena.
Right. And then
it wasn't. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Go ahead. Continue.
But he never made now he has the title at WrestleMania, obviously, Macho Man and Flair, like he's the champion there, but he never actually main events. And the billing, if you watch the intro to WrestleMania, this is WrestleMania 8, right?
Yes.
If you watch this intro, they call it double main event.
They did.
And then they even say, this very well may be Hogan's farewell match. I was like, then why is this the main event? Just the worst, you said it, just the worst booking.
Yes.
WrestleMania 1 through, I'll call it 8, because I thought 9 and 10 were at, like, 9's a cluster, but, like, at least we get Tatanka and Shawn Michaels. But 1 through 8, the booking is just, like, terrible.
Yeah.
It's just like, why? Another great example from WrestleMania 6 of, like, how bad this was. You have Bret Hart and Jimmy Anvil Neidhart, the Hart Foundation, versus the Russians. I forget, Volkov.
That lasts about 45 seconds.
45, like, literally, they come in, they do the heart attack, and they leave. And I go,
we were screaming at the TV.
You have the best, at that time, the best technical wrestler probably on the planet.
Yep.
And you put him in the ring for 45 seconds. And not even to, like...
And the Bolsheviks were a good tag team, too.
That would have been a really good match.
Yes.
Because Jim the Anvil Neidhart is 100% a legend in who he is and what he can do in that ring. That would have been a great match. Why?
Yeah.
So
there was so much of it through the first 10 WrestleManias. A lot of iconic moments, I get it, but some really poor booking. Like early WrestleMania WWF at the time.
Right.
Overall, I would say not very good.
No. WrestleMania, if I had to give a grade of WrestleMania 1 through 10, now that we've done 1 through 10, I'm at like a C, maybe a C minus.
I might be C minus D plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm like looking through my notes and I'm like, there's not a lot to go off of here.
Right. And here's the kicker in all this, and this is why I would probably put it that low, those 1 through 10. you had some great wrestlers.
You did.
You just didn't feature them.
Nope, because they didn't look the part.
So, because now I'm getting but Tully Blanchard and Arn versus Strikeforce is, again, WrestleMania 8.
5.
Okay, WrestleMania 5. Talk about just brilliant in-ring, like, psychology and storytelling. Something that when I saw it, I was like, nobody does that, and I don't understand why. Tito Santana rolls up Tully Blanchard for a pin, and Arn reaches over and tags in and breaks the count. I was like, oh my goodness. Like, all we ever think about breaking the count is a kick out, interference of some sort, grabbing the ropes. But they did it early in the match where, like, it makes sense. Tully's not like, he's not like rocked. So, like, it made sense. So literally, and he like rolled him up in like a schoolboy. So literally Tully's reaching his hand up and Arn just goes boop. And the ref tag breaks. I was like, brilliant. Nobody does this.
Yeah. And I missed that. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch that.
It's so great. And like, but that's what I'm talking about is you had these real wrestlers, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, Tito Santana apparently, Piper, Bret Hart, Jim the Anvil Neidhart, all these that could have, Ric Flair, Macho Man, Steamboat, that could have put on incredible matches, and you featured the wrong people.
Yep. And that is what plagued WrestleMania 1 through 10.
100%.
Well, this was a much more spirited conversation than I thought we were going to get as I was going through this.
I'm hot about this.
But I'm like, we have to get into some of the things we don't like because there's a lot not to like.
Yeah. Like you said, we're on the road to WrestleMania.
We are on, and we'll be doing another episode like this detailing 11 through 20.
Yep. And I can't wait. I might just skip 12.
Yeah. You're going to want to skip a lot of 12, let me tell you. All right. So that's Bear. I'm Hosier, and this is WrestlePool's WrestleMania 1 through 10 review. We're out. For life.